been offered a contract to publish your board game. But what exactly are they asking for? If I sign that document, do I lose all ownership of my game? Do I really want to sign away my life's work? I'm Adam Porter. I'm a board game designer from Wales, and in this series of short videos I'm taking a look at licensing contracts between designers and publishers. If you're finding these game design videos helpful, please share them with other designers, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll preface this video by clarifying, as usual, that I'm not a lawyer. I have no expertise in contract law, but I have signed a dozen or so board game contracts and I've rejected a few more, so I've got a bit of a feel for what they tend to contain and things to look out for. That said, if you have any queries or concerns about a contract which has been proposed, please do get appropriate legal advice before signing. Don't blindly follow my advice. I've selected a few short passages from contracts that I've seen, and I'm going to share them with you. In this video, I'm specifically looking at ownership of the game, what licensing means, and how you can get those rights back if things don't work out. The author hereby grants to the publisher an exclusive license to use the licensed rights, the joint rights, and the trademarks in relation to the commercialization of the product in the territory for the duration of this agreement. So this is what you're selling. In almost all instances, it is not a change of ownership. The license allows the publisher to use your game concept for a specific period, the duration of the contract. There's also a reference in there to a specific territory. Your publishing contract will specify which parts of the world it covers. All the contracts that I've signed have given the publisher the right to distribute my games worldwide, but that isn't always the case. I should clarify that though this is the norm, there are cases where a publisher will offer a one-off payment to purchase the rights permanently. I've talked more about this in my video about royalties. Click the link if you want to find out more. The first contract I was ever offered was alarmingly brief, maybe 2 sides of A4 paper. It was a standard royalty arrangement, but it made no reference to the termination of the agreement or the return of rights to the author. Fortunately, I was sensible enough to run it past a couple of published designers that I knew, and they advised me to walk away. If the game is not published within 18 months of the date of this agreement, the author may demand immediate termination of the agreement. This is an important clause, one to look out for. If it isn't in your original contract, request that it is added before you sign it. The period of time can be negotiated. 18 months might be unrealistic for some publishers. You might also want to clarify the phrase used there, if the game is not published. Well, what does published mean in that context? It would be clearer if it said, if the game is not offered for sale or available to purchase. This agreement may be terminated by the author if the publisher fails to republish the game for a period of 1 year. Again, this clause is important but a little ambiguous. What constitutes republishing the game? A single copy? A digital edition offered for free on the internet? The initial term of license granted shall end 5 years after the date of signing this agreement. If prior to the end of said term the publisher produced at least 50,000 copies of the game, the license is prolonged for 5 years and therefore the new term of license is set. This is much clearer. The agreement is dependent on a specified number of copies being produced. 5 years seems like a long time, but the period starts from the date that you signed the contract, so it will probably be 2 to 3 years before the game's actually released, leaving 2 to 3 years for the publisher to achieve those sales figures. Again, the duration and the sales quantities are negotiable. The publisher has set themselves quite a high bar by stating 50,000 copies when many board games struggle to sell 1/10 of that quantity. Many publishers will work on an annual target, which keeps everything a lot more flexible. The terms of this agreement shall be for 3 years from the date of this agreement and will automatically renew every year if at least 2,000 units of the work has been sold in a year or designer is paid the equivalent of 2,000 units sold in royalty payments for the year. In this instance, the publisher may not have actually sold the specified number of units, but they're able to retain the license if they pay you the equivalent royalties. The author shall be entitled to terminate this agreement if the publisher falls short of the minimum quantity per year specified. The notice period in this case shall be 6 months. Many contracts require you to give notice if you wish to terminate the agreement. So it's important to keep on top of the dates and quantities, especially if you have licenses in place for many games with many different publishers. It's easy to assume, oh, I could pitch that old game of mine to this new publisher, it's been out of print for years. But if you haven't given notice of termination, you may find that you're still under contract with that original publisher. There may be a few other times that agreements are terminated and rights revert back to the designer. For example, the contract might state that the publisher can terminate the agreement at any time. It might mention termination if the publisher goes bankrupt or fails to pay royalties or other breaches of the contract. But what does it actually mean when the rights revert to you? What do you actually get back? Upon termination of this agreement, the work will automatically and immediately revert to the designer, except for any artistic and graphical elements and the use of any brands not owned by the company. Frankly, it's often a little ambiguous. It's safest to think of it as you get back whatever you put in. This means you may not be able to use the same title. You almost certainly wouldn't be able to use the same artwork. You'll probably have to rewrite the rules, and any development work done on the rule set by the publisher is technically retained by them also. But it isn't that clear-cut. The laws around ownership of ideas and concepts are very woolly. It would be hard for a publisher to argue that their development of the concept is totally unusable by the designer. You could negotiate around the use of the title, and even potentially purchase the artwork if you've maintained an amicable relationship with the publisher. One of my contracts states, on termination of the contract, the title of the game shall pass into the author's ownership. I've had the situation where a publisher terminated the contract and handed the rights back to me 8 months after signing one of my games. They had done considerable development on the rule set for the game and also paid me a large advance, which I did not have to return. The publisher was extremely gracious and apologetic, and he clearly specified that I was free to use all of the new ideas which the company had introduced, should I show the game to an alternate publisher. As always, clear and respectful communication is vitally important. And that brings me on to my final point. Signing a contract with a publisher is by no means a guarantee that your game will ever be produced. It's a declaration of intent, nothing more. Many of these termination clauses give the publisher total freedom to abandon the product if they so wish. I have signed around a dozen contracts, and on 3 occasions I've had the rights returned to me without the game ever being produced. Once after 2 weeks, because internal playtests had received lukewarm feedback. Once after 8 months, because of changes in personnel within the production team and a new strategy for the company. And once after 3 years, because of delays and company restructuring during the pandemic period. This is why it's so important to ensure that you receive an advance payment upon initially signing your contract, so that you don't walk away empty-handed. If you want to know more about royalties, advance payments, and the financial rewards you might receive, click on the link.